So, why have I decided to do this? Well, there's this huge lifestyle disease epidemic. There's obesity, diabetes, there's so much autoimmunity. It covers so many different diseases, some listed there. There's the heart, liver and kidney disease, cancer. Mental illness is also very much tied to lifestyle. So, what's the answer to all these? Why are they all happening? The doctors don't have an awful lot of answers. Now, really, I'd like to say that I'm not at all against doctors. I think they're wonderful, they do wonderful things, life-saving procedures. Acute conditions, heart attacks, anaphylactic shock. Diagnostics is great. You can't find out what's wrong with yourself as well as you can under some of the techniques they've got. Antibiotics for life-threatening bacterial infections. Great, absolutely. Trauma, broken bones, internal injuries. Getting saucepans off children's heads, you know, stuff like this is also mechanical stuff, you know, surgery, absolutely wonderful. So whenever I'm having a little pop at the conventional system, it's really the drug companies I'm thinking about and the perpetuating of these type of treatments for chronic lifestyle diseases. So when you've been diagnosed, the doctor will tell you often anything of these autoimmune things that it's incurable. This instills fear and panic. It's not the doctor's fault. They absolutely mean well. They'll prescribe medications. This leads to other medications. They'll tell you not to research on the internet as well, which is very, very understandable because you'll have a look at something, you'll be overwhelmed with information. You might land on an absolute nutter's site, first of all, or even second and third and fourth, and I have, and I've done the most ridiculous things. But after many, many years of this kind of research and experimentation and working with other people, you find that you can take a lot from all these different disciplines and you can find incredible truths in many different things and take all the good out of different specific areas that might not be conventional. The docs will also tell you very often that dietary change won't work, but it can't hurt. They often say that, but they don't have a lot of training in diet. You know, they're fabulous physicians and they understand an awful lot about the human body, but with diet, they only a very short amount of training, and then it's usually in the old, you know, calories in, calories out, low fat, watch your cholesterol. But it's pretty much old technology, really. So then it's off to the dietitian or a slimming club, and again they do some real good. But a lot of the wisdom that dietitians have come from quite some time ago, when we really did have the misinformation that saturated fat was bad, that it clogs your arteries, all this kind of thing. And the slimming clubs, they do great work, they get a lot of weight off people, but the focus is on the weight loss rather than overall health. What I'd like to try and show here is how to stop thinking about weight loss as such, but to start thinking about how to make your body healthy on a mitochondrial level. This is on a cellular level. Make the cells healthy, everything else follows suit. Quite often the slimming clubs, dietitians, they'll recommend inflammatory foods such as grains, you know, whole grains, saying this is healthy. They warn against high-fat foods. They don't distinguish also between fat loss and muscle loss. This often happens. So you can lose a whole load of weight, and I'll come to how I've done this. You know, I've fallen foul of that one, that weight loss doesn't always mean health. And they believe health and fat loss are all about diet. Actually, there's an awful lot more factors that come into it. So why am I qualified to disagree with all this? Well, this is me on the left about 2009, I guess. And that's me on the right about 2011. All my life, I've been really interested in health, fitness, diet, everything. I've been, even in the late 70s, early 80s, I was swept up with the whole macrobiotic craze. I always wanted to see how food relates to health and what it does to the body. And then from the mid-80s I was vegetarian. I thought this is the way to go. I was involved very much with the whole TM thing, the meditation thing. And so then you have this, this kind of diluted Hindu thing that you should always be vegetarian. And, you know, it was okay for a while, but by the early 90s, things were starting to go wrong. I was, just little whispers. It's amazing, this is one thing I've seen so much, that before anything really serious hits, you will get whispers, little whispers, well in advance. And it's the sort of non-specific thing that you can't really take to your doctor. You know, if you're a hunter-gatherer, I guess you go to the shaman and say, I've had a bad dream, and they take it seriously and they stop it at that level. But here, your leg's got to be practically hanging off before they'll take it seriously as a condition. So I didn't really have any condition there. I mean, late 90s, I ran a gym, I was writing for health magazines and mountain biking magazines, weight training magazines. I wrote a book in 96, and actually it was quite good, except for the diet section, which I've since redone. But there I was, muscly and late 90s, quite fit, quite healthy, but I never got lean. I couldn't understand how I could never get lean. I just wanted a set of abs, you know? I thought, I've got to be able to get a set of abs. How difficult can it be? I cycle like 20 miles every day. I'm always working out. I'm watching these calories and eating all these whole grains. Well, I didn't realize what was going on and how the inflammation was building up. And this picture on the left, you know, is like 12 years after that. And the same diet had started to make me really fat. And I couldn't really figure it out, because every time I tried to stop it, and turn it back with cardio exercise and all the conventional means, it wasn't working. Every now and again, though, I used to go on the Atkins diet, and I'd think, well, I'll go on that for a couple of weeks, and I'd lose loads of weight. But then I'd think, well, I better get back to a healthy diet, even though when I was on this Atkins diet, it was supposed to be so unhealthy with all the meat and the saturated fat. I felt 15 again. All the inflammation would die down, it would feel absolutely wonderful, but I'd still think, I'll have to get back onto a healthy diet. So then, this is the weight loss doesn't mean health bit. So I decided, I'd already had a website up. This is the top left one. This one here. I thought, okay, I'm going to track my progress back to health. I was really healthy when I started doing all this and writing about it. I'm going to track my progress. I thought, so I got out on bike rides. I was doing all this special breathing. I was doing all this yogic stuff that I knew, and none of it was working. And actually, a year later, when I got back from a holiday in Thailand, my one ankle blew up, the other ankle blew up, then the left knee, the back had already been bad for a long time. I had all sorts of skin issues, fatty liver, cysts on the liver, all sorts. But the real crippling thing that woke me up was the arthritis. It was psoriatric arthritis, which is pretty much like rheumatoid. And even though I thought I really knew a lot about health and diet, I was still scared and went to the doctors, took the meds. It was horrendous. It made things an awful lot worse. So I really started to experiment. And because I had that kind of meditator's vegetarian mindset, I thought, it's got to be raw vegan. It's got to be. So then raw vegan, then fruitarian, then everything. But I was also doing really long fasts, water fasts, up to 11 days, just because I was so frightened of eating, because I found that if I fasted, all the inflammation disappeared. So I knew what the doctors were saying about it being something to do with, nothing to do with diet, was proper nonsense. So the result, really, of that, of a year of that, is this one, where I've probably lost 5 stone there, but I'm emaciated. And probably the heaviest part of my body there is the dreadlocks, I think. It's everything else is wasted away. So I thought, I was pretty desperate. This picture here, you can see the inflammation in the ankles. I could barely walk. I mean, I remember getting onto this beach via a load of painkillers. And then soon after this, which must have been 2012 or so, I discovered that a website actually led me to it, beyondvegetarianism.com, so beyondveg.com or something. Some vegetarian guys, and I was looking up the failure to thrive on these vegan diets, because I just wasn't, I had brain fog, I was still inflamed, I'd lost a load of weight, and certain things had reversed because I cut the grains out. But it really didn't give me the boost that I thought. I was pretty desperate by then. I thought, I'm maybe not going to get on top of this ever. So then later on that year, I actually discovered it, and another stone went off with actually stuffing myself with saturated fat. And I was way too skinny here, and by the time I did actually get really lean, I didn't really have any muscle left because of all the fasting and the vegan diet and whatever. So I had a lot of rebuilding to do. This is the one that really disturbed me. If you look at this, you see that knee there, that left knee is so inflamed, and the quad is almost completely gone. I was in a proper mess. But actually, things were starting to rebuild. And then later on in that summer up here, things were really starting to come together again. I was really surprised. Apart from the fact that the body was still dealing with things, I had an awful lot of things to go. Like, I remember 2 days after that, I was visiting my son in Spain, and I was in hospital with the most horrendous kidney stone. I'd managed to shift it out with a Coke and asparagus trick. If anyone's got kidney stones, I'll tell you how to do that, but make sure they're not too big and they don't get wedged down the ureter. It's the only use for Coca-Cola, but my God, the pain. Oh, God. Anyway, so I got cleared of that, and then this one, back on the drums. I couldn't even pick up a drumstick for ages. I think this might have been a gig out there we used to do, out in the marquee. In the marquee. it was probably back in 2013, 14. I can't remember now. 2014.
About 3 years ago.
Yeah. And then, with the kind of methods that I'm going to talk about today, the inflammation really, really died down. Finally, I sort of had my life back. Now, I've seen people do this process that took me about 3 or 4 years. I've seen people do it in 6 weeks. You know, it's incredible what you can do with reducing inflammation if you really cover everything. But it took so much digging. Between that first picture and the last picture there, which is after finally a winter after that shot on the drums, and finally I could train again. And I could actually lift some weights and put a little bit of that muscle back on again. And I never thought I'd get there, you know, I never thought I would at certain stages. But now, having discovered what people are actually doing and seeing in this time, between that first picture and the last picture, there's thousands and thousands of hours of research and experimentation with the most bizarre things. I won't go into them today. They're in my book, but I took some really wacky wrong turns, So, yeah, I think I've made most of the mistakes possible. But then I found that the secret of success with healing, it's not in healing the disease. That's not really that difficult. It's getting rid of the enormous amount of misinformation. And I'm sure I'm not at the bottom of it yet. There's loads of things I discover every day. And I still study it every day. It's fascinating. But it's not really that difficult to reverse a disease. If you know how, it's pretty simple. The problem is getting rid of the brainwashing, the conventional dogma that holds you back, and then the other levels of dogma where somebody's got this weird website that said that, and somebody's got this and that. In between the first pick there and the last pick, I've seen doctors change their attitudes so much on this. There's so many coming across to this way of thinking, and they're healing their patients with it. I'll show you some of them later on. But I heard a great phrase the other day, so I bunged it in there. Every disease is curable, but not every patient. I see everything being cured. You know, you see it all over the place. People come up with these stories, and then the scientists and other people throw it out. There's not enough evidence. There's not enough. There's a tidal wave of evidence. You know, there really is. I've done this with arthritis. There's Tony here, who's reversed his diabetes. There's Steve here, who's dropped 5 stone and he's off all his pain meds. You know, I see it so often, and it's so nice to know that you're getting to the root of the health rather than just fixing the weight. So there's this kind of theory that this was a common cartoon among the paleo crowd, where the devolution of man, you know, as soon as he starts drinking and eating that stuff, this is the sort of body shape we get left with. And then paleo came in. This term, the paleo diet. Is it a solution, or is it just more dogma? Well, it's kind of both. It's taken people to a really much better way of eating a lot more natural foods, but you can get too stuck in it. What I want to do here is to show people how to open up their intuition of what they should be eating for their body at that time of year. You know, all this matters with their past medical history, all these kind of things. So yes, a paleo diet, great, but I think you can go quite a bit further than that. It's kind of a useful template, in a way. We'll come to that too. So this whole new way of thinking, this was what was so great for me. instead of having a prescribed method of anything, whether it's from a doctor or from a naturopath or from anybody, having something prescribed, some prescribed technique, it doesn't really give you your own power. It doesn't give you your own responsibility over your health, and that's what really makes people better, and they start to understand what's going on. And although I've just said that the paleo thing is a little bit of a weird way to look at it, it can be quite useful for figuring out everything in life. There was a time when these cultures, if you can believe bone records, you know, that they were a lot healthier. And around the time that farming came in, 10,000 years ago, whatever, then the theory is that they started farming grains and having dairy, and the health declined. Now, whether that's true or not, and it probably is, if you look at the hunter-gatherer tribes now, indigenous people in any latitude, they eat what's there. They're all healthy. They don't have these diseases. People go, oh well, there's a life expectancy, there's nothing, 30 years. Yes, but there was a lot of infant mortality. There's a lot of people falling out of trees and being attacked by animals and bacterial infections, things like that. But they don't really have these rates of cancer. Then people go, oh well, they don't live long enough to get those cancers. No, we've got a huge explosion of childhood diabetes, cancers, autoimmunity all over the place. So it really isn't that. Something else is going wrong. Whether they're up in the Arctic, or whether they're in the Amazon, or whether they're on the equator, whatever, they're eating natural stuff that's there. The advantage of thinking about it that way, instead of thinking about cutting the carbs or calories or anything like that, is just that when you understand a certain way into the ancestral way of thinking, even if it's a made-up template, which it could be, most of anything in human knowledge is, but it becomes a kind of fascinating lifestyle instead of a sort of penance. Yeah, penance that you're putting yourself through. I'm dieting. I'm paying for my sins. It isn't like that at all. It becomes really interesting, and the food's so good anyway. So forget the old idea of dieting, jogging, and low-fat foods being the keys to health. They're old dogma. So how did they come about? Well, have a look at this. This is a little 2-minute vid that's quite amusing from the full-length feature, Big Fat Lies. It's quite cool. It explains a lot.
If you could pack all of human history into 1 year, we've only been farming and eating grain since about yesterday, which is when we became shorter and fatter. We only started consuming processed vegetable oils about 10 minutes ago, which is when heart disease became our #1 killer. So after examining all this human history, the experts came to the obvious conclusion. We need to eat a lot more of these. And so they convinced us that human health depends on foods we didn't eat for more than 99% of our entire existence. How did this happen? In the 1950s, a biochemist named Ancel Keys published a study that compared heart disease and fat consumption in a half-dozen countries. The more fat, the more heart disease. The trend line was unmistakable. Just one little problem. Keys left out countries where people eat a lot of fat but have very little heart disease, like Holland and Norway. He also left out countries where people don't eat much fat but do have a lot of heart disease, like Chile. In fact, Keys had reliable data from 22 countries, and the results were all over the place. But you can't make a big splash in the scientific community with a trend line that looks like this. So Keys did what any dedicated researcher would do. He threw out the data that didn't fit and published his results. His punishment for this bit of scientific chicanery was to get his picture on the cover of Time magazine. Keys became known as the father of the lipid hypothesis, which says that eating saturated fat raises the cholesterol in your blood, and high cholesterol in your blood clogs your arteries and causes heart disease.
The hypothesis that when you eat high fat, that produces high cholesterol, and that cholesterol produces heart disease, is wrong in every one of those links.
This whole idea that dietary fat causes cholesterol problems is sort of a myth. The whole idea that cholesterol problems lead to heart disease is a myth.
The theory is completely and totally wrong. It was a theory that was made out of whole cloth and then pushed.
The term artery clogging saturated fat. It's as though it's all one word.
It's become part of the zeitgeist. Everybody knows saturated fat is bad for you, but when you get back and you start looking at the medical literature and you root back through to find out where this whole idea came from, it's bogus.
So, what happened to Ancel Keys? Well, I think that's quite a funny story, because Ancel Keys, having convinced America that saturated fat was horrendous and we should put sugar in everything, he left America with this enormous obesity problem and then disappeared off to live in a village in Italy, where he probably ate a very high-fat Mediterranean diet and lived to be 100 years old. So, I'm not sure he really followed through on his own advice there. I was going to do this other bit, but I won't go into it. It's a bit negative. It's just about, it's another doctor talking about how 15,000 Americans are killed every month from prescription drugs. And it really isn't the answer. You know, we're all frightened. I remember a time when I was a real hypochondriac, and every little ache and pain, down to the doctor, is it a tumour, is it this, is it that? I don't know if anybody's ever been through a stage like that, but sometimes it can actually be the whispers of something coming up. You know, things come up slowly. The body has its instrument panel and we don't listen. But if we think that the pills are going to be an answer, there isn't. There's never been a single chronic disease cured by a medication. Now, okay, bacterial things can be cured, but there's a doctor somewhere who goes out and does talks to other doctors about this, and he says, look, nothing has ever been cured. And he has a $100 bill. He's been all around the States, thousands and thousands of doctors. Anyone who can tell me a disease that's been cured by a pharmaceutical can have this $100 bill, and he's never given it away yet. So there just isn't a cure. They'll block the symptoms for a while, but this is the first mindset. If we get anything going wrong with us, give me a pill. The second mindset is give me a herb or a supplement. You see, these generally also don't work because the body's in such a state that the supplements don't get a chance to work. I like to think of this as a muddy car. If you've got a muddy car, you don't polish it. You hose the mud off, and then you can find some polishing agents, you know, and you can polish the last little bits off. And we've got some great stuff coming up about that with my wonderful friend Gabby, who's a naturopath. If anybody's got any questions about this and actually what you really do need and proper testing for that and finding out the correct thing you need rather than swallowing half of Holland and Barrett, she's great. She's absolutely brilliant. So she'll be along soon. Well, in weeks to come. So far more effective is to remove the factors that are causing the problem. There's an old saying, isn't there, that it takes a lot of aspirin to take away the pain if you're sitting on a drawing pin. You just get off the drawing pin. It's the best way around. But the problem is, with so much conflicting info, it's hard to identify those factors. So what are those factors? Well, the cause of disease, again, you can think about it as disconnects with ancestral lifestyles. It's not just diet. I put diet as number one because we're dealing with that mostly today. But I believe the business of artificial light is absolutely huge. We're sitting here under blue light now. We're not really supposed to be. You know, before Edison invented the light bulb, we never saw blue light after sundown. We had fires, we had candles, we had lamps. And the science is really in on this. There's the melatonin receptors in the eyes, and then yes, all the information gets fed back to, and can anybody pronounce this? Suprachiasmatic nucleus or something. Anyway, the part in the brain that controls the whole sort of clock system of the body. There's clocks in every cell as well. Light is even detectable through our skins. And everybody's staying up late, staring at iPads. Their clocks are off. They're under Wi-Fi as well. The non-native nnEMFs, this is absolutely huge. The things that I found, the improvements I found as I ironed out every single one of these, we can never do it perfectly. You know, we're always going to be under artificial light. I go out and play gigs and I'm not going to wear a pair of orange shades because I'll get beaten up for trying to look like a rock star. But in the house, after this time, we'll have candles on. It's great. And if you look at a screen, you put some orange shades on. You just try and watch a film. You sit down at 9 o'clock, you go, I'll watch a film. 5 minutes later, you're gone. Because the sleep cycle is so much kicked in and nobody heals from anything. without this sleep cycle. And if the clocks are off in the body, it's very, very difficult to lose weight as well. It all goes hand in hand. The toxins, heavy metals, pesticides, hormones, mold, we all know about these. You know, we're already onto these, most people. But we don't realize that probably artificial light is more powerful. And the Wi-Fi and the mobile phones, the amount of tumors they're causing and whatever, but they do all sorts of subtle things. Like people are complaining about the bees, and they're saying all the bees are dying. And it's the pesticides. Why are all the bees dying with these pesticides? Well, actually, there's some thought now that they were surviving the pesticides for a while until the EMFs came up, and the EMFs make the blood-brain barrier porous to all of these other things, and they do exactly the same to us. So why were people healthy many years ago, eating loads of bread, grains, all that sort of thing? Because they had everything else right, and there wasn't all the bromide and whatever they put into the grains. And then, so hugely important, I'd have this as #1 every time, is the stress and emotional balancing. And Maidi's a genius here, this lady in the red in the front. She put me onto the most extraordinary things here, and really it was the last piece of the puzzle for my healing. And I'm kind of ashamed that I left it till last, because we can get totally obsessed with diet and exercise and all that kind of thing, and not look at the real subtler things. But when you actually look at the signals that your body gives you, it's quite extraordinary that you can trace them back to specific emotional imbalances. And time and again, I healed up my ankles like that when I sorted something out, when other joints were raging, and that's supposed to be totally impossible. No rheumatologist will ever admit that that's possible. It was quite a journey, that one. So we can deal with that. In future things, I'd like to do some stuff about all the emotional things, emotional aspects of eating as well. That's huge. Sometimes you're battling against yourself as well as the dietary choices. So this old expression, it's me glands, I hardly eat anything, I'm so overweight, and nothing ever shifts. Well, a lot of this was, I think, came from the time when nobody realized how hormonal being overweight is. Jack Kruse has a great expression. Jack Kruse is a neurosurgeon in the States who I think has put together some of this stuff better than anybody I've ever seen. Ava's not made it tonight. She's got a crisis, but we would have had a bit of a ding-dong, I think, about Jack Kruse, because I think he's a genius. She thinks he's barking mad. I think we're probably both right. But the stuff he's put together is quite extraordinary, and he says that, you know, obesity is an inflammatory brain disorder. It's not a disease of overeating. And once those hormones have been pushed out of the way, there's got to be a big period of really seriously incorrect eating to upset the hormones. But once that's happened, it can be more difficult to come back from it. You can have like one bagel a day or something and still stay overweight. A lot of people experience this. So leptin is the hormone that tells us we're full. I'm mentioning this boring bit of science, and I'm not really into any of the science, to be honest. I don't have a scientific mind at all, but this is really well worth knowing about leptin. Leptin is a hormone that tells us we're full, and it's perhaps the master hormone balancing all the others. It was only discovered recently in about the 90s. Most diet and exercise science was designed before leptin was discovered, so it's kind of barking up the wrong tree a lot of the time. If you reset leptin, insulin also, which regulates blood sugar and fat storage, this will be a knock-on effect. You can balance the whole emotional hormonal cascade, and wonderful things happen when leptin's back in balance. It can be more difficult for women, and Jack Kruse has an interesting leptin reset of piling in protein first thing in the morning to reset this leptin, and it works. I don't think it's the best way to eat long term, but maybe 3 months or so, and we can do some great things with this. When leptin and insulin are out of balance, yes, the whole hormones go down, and one hormone will knock another one. The body is a whole system. Standard carb-based calorie-controlled diets don't balance leptin and insulin. Instead, they rely on willpower. So you can lose a load of weight, but when you lose weight like that, very often it becomes yo-yoing. And you know, Steve's nodding there. I think he's found that. I certainly found that. You lose a stone, put it back on, lose a stone, put it back on. Never really make any good inroads into it. Now, Ava had a great story about hers, and I'll leave her to tell that next time. But she had a great experience with this. She lost an awful lot of weight with a very interesting story. So, how do you find some way to eat that's actually satisfying? Well, people have all these little cheap things. Oh, let's have this cake, or that one made out of coconut flour. Yes, if you're healthy, that's fine. It's probably not going to do any harm at all. But one thing I found, instead of finding all these little fiddly things, I just went really simple and found out what you can eat, what are the actual natural foods that you can eat. And it took me to get rid of a bit of, you know, meditators, vegetarian brainwashing on this one. But what I found was that the diet that I was eating, that I thought was so healthy, which was a sort of grain and pulse-based diet, was really wrecking my gut. The signs were there. Every time I used to eat my incredibly healthy rice, dal and vegetables, I used to have horrendous heartburn all afternoon. I'd live on Rennies, and eventually I just lived on Rennies permanently. Anything would set it off. And that's usually where it starts, you know, one end or the other. In the middle, it's a little bit quieter, and you can't figure out what's going on. But then all kinds of stuff can go wrong. It leads to reflux, IBS, all of these things. It's all the same tube. We overcomplicate these diseases, like we make distinctions. Have you got Crohn's or have you got IBS? Have you got this, have you got that? No, just fix the gut. And then the body will bring the systems in that will heal that. The starchy and sugary foods, especially the grains, unbalance the gut bacteria, leading to IBS. Most meds, antibiotics, all sorts of autoimmunity through the body is to do with the gut health. 70% of our immune system's in the gut. There's more bacterial cells in our bodies than human cells, really. And the docs are just starting to realize this, and that's why maybe this might shift, I think, in the next little while. But they're still way behind. Nobody understands the immune system. Nobody understands the gut. So all you can do is to get the influences right that will allow the body to rebalance that gut flora, because we don't know how to do it. They're messing about now with fecal implants, and that seems to be working, but there's other problems with it. It's still a bit Russian roulette. So a low-carb, high-fat, ketogenic diet with bone broths and fermented probiotic foods can re-establish the balance and reverse inflammation disease. If I'd have seen that sentence and believed it back in 2010, I'd have had a much, much, much easier time. I don't say there's only one way to fix something, but if something's gone so far as you have some kind of metabolic disease, if you've got a lot of fat around the middle, your insulin's out of balance without a doubt, whether you've been diagnosed diabetic or not, another imaginary line that they draw. So if you fix that, all sorts of things can come back in, and to take out all the carbs and fats for a while. I don't think carbs are necessarily the devil. I really don't. A lot of people say you have to be keto, you have to stay ketogenic. I don't think that's true. I don't think it does any harm. I think it is safe long term, but not totally necessary permanently. This ketogenic diet, if anybody's not familiar with it, I'll come on to exactly what it is in a moment. But if you're healthy and reasonably lean, eat grain-free carbs seasonally according to your latitude. Everybody did. Nobody would have said, oh, we can't eat carbs. They were in the sun, they had the vitamin D, they had their feet on the ground. They didn't have the stresses of modern life, like a hunter-gatherer tribe. Would they be looking at posters thinking, I have to be that body shape? I'm really worried about my mortgage. They didn't have chronic fight or flight response, this huge cortisol business going on all the time that we have, that ruins, on its own, that'll ruin your hormonal balance, never mind if you're eating pizza all day. So if you're healthy and reasonably lean, absolutely, pick a banana off the tree, but then you get these questions, is a banana paleo? People say, oh, is a banana paleo? Well, where do you live? If you're an Inuit, no, it's not. It's really not paleo, because nothing would ever grow there. Nothing like that would ever grow there. And this is to do with the light cycles. This is something that was huge for me to figure out. When you're saying, is this food good, is that food not good? Well, look at nature, ignore all the diet gurus. There's nothing wrong with dropping carbs out. You can drop carbs out, fine. For at least a winter, a summer and a winter, get the body reset, and then the next summer after that, come back to them. Eat some berries, eat some local fruit. But we wouldn't have eaten the enormous amount that we ate. That we eat now. Everything has bread with it. Everything has chips with it. Everything. The pain, when you have something autoimmune and really inflammatory, the pain that you feel when you eat a handful of chips or something, it's enormous. There's not such a bad food, potatoes. You know, a bit starchy, but not such a bad food. But it's what do you call it? A nightshade. So certain foods, you can feel the inflammatory response, and you think, well, this is probably happening in other people. It's just it hasn't broken through yet. They don't have quite the same genetics as I do. That means that my knee ends up like a football if I eat a bite of a sandwich or something. So anyway, it's a great way It's a great tool to use. Ketosis is a great tool to use for losing body fat and reversing chronic illness. It's also very good for, completely forgot what I was going to say there. Never mind, I'll come back to that one. I'm sure it'll come up when I have my notes on the ketosis. So docs, they're still worried about it. They're still worried about it. They say, this doc here is saying he went low carb, he lost 90 pounds, did all sorts of other wonderful things. But I'm warning you, a low carb diet's bad for your health. This normally comes from their training from diabetics, where with ketoacidosis, when a diabetic would be in serious trouble producing that many ketones. But nutritional ketosis, honestly, nothing to worry about. There really isn't, as long as it's formulated right. These are some doctors who understand. When I started, I was pretty much on my own, and I didn't realize how many docs are coming over to this, and brilliant doctors too. If you have any doubts about this, honestly go and research some of these guys. If you forget about them, it's okay. They're all on the resources page of my website. And you can find the most incredible rabbit holes here from these people. I looked at thousands and thousands of things, and these are really the cream of the crop, these people. Terry Walls, she's a doctor in the States. She had very advanced multiple sclerosis, and she fixed it through a very, very low-carb ketogenic diet, pretty much. Lots of greens, she stresses that. She has a great book, Minding Your Mitochondria, I think. Natasha Campbell-McBride, she was amazing for me. She is a Russian-trained neurosurgeon, neurologist. She cured her own son of autism by all of this bone broth probiotic thing, fixed his gut, and his autism disappeared. So she's become a huge expert on this, but it's nothing new, it's just ancestral knowledge. All of this business of bone broths and probiotic foods sounds so simple. Having gone through all this other stuff, this complicated stuff I've gone through to get here, boiling up a few bones and taking some probiotics fixes the gut, it's extraordinary. Malcolm Kendrick, he's a great guy. I did a talk with him a little while ago. He's a Scottish doctor who wrote The Great Cholesterol Con back in 2008 or so, and speaks about it now, he's very outspoken about the real crimes of statin drugs and how it's based on complete and utter pseudoscience, you know. The cholesterol theory, well out there. Asim Malhotra, a southern cardiologist, he's fantastic. He's doing a lot of speaking now. He's on the radio and television all the time, making a big noise about how saturated fats never were the problem. There's some local docs, Joanne McCormack in Warrington and David and Jen Unwin in Southport. Great results with low carb of reversing diabetes in their patients. I've done some talks with them too, and I'd really like if anybody who wants to do this, but they're worried about coming off meds, things like that. I have my own opinions on it, but I don't want to give out any medical advice. I don't want to get in any trouble, and it's much better coming from a doctor. She'll be able to tell you safely how to come off any meds that you're on, and how to do that as the health improves and the meds also become a bit too strong. But anyway, Joanne's lovely, and I hope she's going to come along and talk in future weeks as well. Jack Cruz, again, the marvellous barking mad Jack Cruz. Check him out. He's very difficult to read in print, but if you put his name into YouTube, you'll come up with some interviews that are absolutely mind-blowing on light and mitochondria and exactly what's going on. So what's a ketogenic diet? It's low carb, moderate or high fat, moderate, high protein, depending on your goals of what you're actually losing. I'm a terrible butter monster, and Ava would have had a go at me about that because it's very difficult. I've realised, I used to think, oh yes, you just put as much fat as you want on anything, but it won't make you ill, but it actually does stop people losing weight. I had to have a smack from Ava to realise that. So keep daily protein to 1 gram per pound of lean body weight. It's not a really high protein diet. It can be if you're training. There are certain times it can be, but let's say it's a high fat, low carb, moderate protein diet. It doesn't mean to say you're eating whole pigs every day, but really if you eat bacon, don't cut the fat off. You're absolutely fine, and don't put it in a sandwich. So keep carbs to 40 grams per day or less, preferably under 20 grams. I'm shooting through this. I know if you're not familiar with this might be difficult, but I can easily mail you out. Just contact me. I'll mail you out all of this to make it much clearer, just to give you an idea of what's involved. You can track your intake of food, which will give you the calories, it'll give you the balance of carbs, fats, and proteins. It'll give you all the vitamins, minerals. Paleo Track's a good one. it becomes second nature after a while, and you can pretty much tell what you're eating. This diet, this ketogenic diet, it's a puzzle to me why it's not used more in the NHS, because it was rediscovered to control seizures in children. A little while ago, I was watching a diet program on the television. Well, I try to avoid them because I end up shouting at them, and my missus has to kind of calm me down and wedge a spoon in my mouth or something. Because even the ones which give some great information, it's always hidden by other sort of red herrings, and it's very difficult to see, I think, when you first come to it, what is nonsense and what isn't. But in this one, I think it's called the Food Hospital. I don't know if anybody saw it. They were bringing people in, meeting up with all these dietitians, and all sorts of ailments, you know, psoriasis, this person got this one, diabetes, this one's got joint pain, gout, all this kind of thing. And they were trying all these different things. Some people were saying, when they came in, they were saying, okay, we'll cut this grain and maybe have oats instead of this, and all these funny little substitutions. And they were having little results. They come back in 3 months and say, oh, my knee hurts slightly less. And you go, oh, come on, do it properly. But they were having little improvements. So going, isn't this wonderful? And then a kid came in with seizures, and I thought, this is going to be interesting. So this kid was having about 80 seizures a day, constant seizures, grand mal ones, little absences, all sorts of stuff going on. And so they said, right, ketogenic diet. I thought, marvellous, this will be great. So they got somebody to teach the parents how to do it. Anyway, had him on a really, really low-carb diet. And he came back after 3 months and I said, how are you doing? He said, well, the seizures are down. How many seizures have you had? And he said, the parents said 3. 3, down from 80 a day to 3. He said, no, that was the whole time. I said, well, here we go. Look how incredibly efficient this is. Just give it a go in rheumatology, for goodness sake. Take it over to the diabetes clinic. Take it somewhere else and see what this can do. Here's an Inuit picnic. You know, they're great. The kids, we've come a long way from this, from here to McDonald's. And I think when meat gets a bad name, like not many of us are going to sit there and rip a reindeer to bits or whatever, but it's totally healthy. This is what humans did when they were healthy. They'd eat a bit of the kill, they'd take some back, they'd cook it, they'd drink the blood, they'd do all kinds of things. But it doesn't really matter whether it's that or whether it's a root vegetable at the right time of year. This is natural food. Sometimes it can be a bit ugly, but hey, the Inuit, they used to eat, well, they still do if they're healthy. They eat, you know, 80% odd fat, 20% protein. They do eat some berries in the spring. They'll find some, but a lot of the time they must be in ketosis, most of the year. Absolutely fine, no problems until the bread came to the trading post. And now, I read a great article the other day where they're starting to have real obesity problems, these Arctic tribes, because they've got pasta and rice and noodles and stuff. So obesity among the Inuit blamed on instant noodles. And I can believe it, they got off their natural diet. When the polar explorers went up there, they packed rice and beans and died of scurvy. But these guys weren't dying of scurvy and they weren't eating a lot of vitamin C. It's an interesting puzzle, I think, that one. So the advantages of a keto diet, there's no such thing as an essential carbohydrate. There isn't. You can drop them out, you'll be absolutely fine. You might have a 30-day period, but while the body decides it's going to go from glucose to ketone bodies, which are produced in the liver when you don't give the body any carbs. But there are ways around that, balancing the electrolytes, we can help with that. I went through some weird times, but you don't have to. You really don't have to go through any sort of times like that if you balance the potassium, sodium and magnesium. That's usually the problem in the first 30 days as the kidneys decide to function in a different way. But there's no such thing as an essential carbohydrate. You ask any dietitian, there isn't one. There are essential nutrients, but you can get them from vegetables, that's absolutely fine. You can get them from meat, you can get them from fish, eggs. You don't need an actual stodgy carbohydrate. So when the body adapts to ketones, it also becomes very efficient at burning fat, using it as a primary fuel. So you're burning fat in a way that isn't eating tiny little portions of what you used to eat that made you ill in the first place. It's a completely different mindset. Ketosis is also really protective against the escalating environmental fats. I touched on that earlier, where Jack was on about how his factor X in why everybody's getting so sick Ketosis is very protective if you're in a cold climate, which is not so good for humans, a low light climate, a climate or a latitude where you have a load of artificial light, where the Wi-Fi is on and mobile phones are on, all of these things going on. Ketosis is actually a very good state to be in that allows the body to almost mimic fasting. So it promotes autophagy, which means that the body goes into a state, when you stop eating and the stomach's empty, the body will go into a state where it starts to mop up other things that it needs to do. It'll go and reduce inflammation, it'll clear all the mess out of cells, you know, and in between cells. All of this stuff that it does, all its little healing processes. This is why fasting has always been a fantastic method for getting rid of disease. If you can make it 40 days, you can see people getting rid of cancer, heart disease in one hit. You know, the body can really fix itself. And ketosis actually mimics fasting in a lot of ways, both with its own action of running on ketones, but also because meals usually become less frequent. When you're running on fat, it's like putting a log on the fire. It burns for a long time and stable, but carbs, you throw a newspaper on, it burns, it's gone, the energy's gone, you get that sugar spike, you know, and then you need another donut, and then you need a sugary cup of tea, and it goes on all day. You get hunger in ketosis, but it's a great feeling because you don't think, oh, I've got to rush away, I need this sugar right now, desperately. You just notice you're hungry, and then you go on, you know your body's going to be eating whatever's on here anyway. It's got, it increases the size of your fuel tank enormously. I think even the skinniest person's got 40,000 calories of energy in their fat stores, but only about 3,000 can be held as glucose in the muscles. So a lot of the people who are doing these really massive races now, big ultra marathons, hundreds of miles across the Arctic or whatever, they got a bit of a secret. Quite a lot of them are actually training very, very low carb now, just taking water with them, and everybody else is popping all these horrible sugary whatevers to keep them going. Are very protective against chronic cardio as well, and shortening your telomeres. So the meal frequency reduces, very good stable energy levels, and emotions too. It all knocks on. It's very interesting that way. It provides all the nutrients you need. You rarely need to supplement with anything. You don't, you know, if you go on a vegan diet, you need B12, things like that. If you go on a really good, well-formulated keto diet, you won't need any supplements at all. You might need some to rebalance it, some magnesium in the beginning. Everybody's deficient in that, whatever. So what's the nuts and bolts of it? If you only do these first two things, you'll notice such a huge difference. And it's so difficult for people. I go in a supermarket now, and I think there's only 2 aisles with proper food. Processed packaged foods. If something's got an ingredient list, just get rid of it. You don't have any control about what's going in there. There's all kinds of things can go in there. Cereals, you know, all of these things that people have around their houses. Grain-based foods, bread, rice, pasta, and cereals. They're very inflammatory. They really do hurt the gut. Whether they have all the way through our history, I don't know. But the huge difference that people see in their health just from reducing the grains, really, just from kicking them out, is absolutely massive. You can go much further than that. The natural sugars, fruit, honey, however you pronounce that one, I've never known because I've never spoken it out loud, but I've seen it in health food shops. Anyway, all these sort of natural things that they're called. Now, nightshades, fine, good foods. Potatoes a bit carby if you're trying to lose weight, but tomatoes, peppers, aubergines, they're good foods, they're great foods, but if you've got anything autoimmune, if you've got anything like IBS, if you've got something like psoriasis, anything like that, it can perpetuate that inflammatory response. Pulses, lentils, kidney beans, soya products, always touted as incredibly healthy. No, they're really not. Again, I'd sort of look at that, I'd take it back to some ancestral thing. If I'm wandering around without any tools, would I actually eat any of this? How long have I been adapted to this? You wouldn't really eat the grains, they're not very nice, and you wouldn't find so many together at once, grasses, this and that, I suppose. The pulses, lentils, kidney beans, you'd eat a few of them and then you'd have such bad bellyache, you probably wouldn't do it again. And then vegetable oils, margarines, and low-fat spreads. What an enormous con that always was. What a con. Incredible where that came from. One molecule off plastic and we decided they're more healthy than butters. That's a real puzzle. And then low-fat dairy. I see one thing I always see, apart from the endless loads of bread in somebody's shopping trolley who's overweight, is this red top milk stuff, you know, and it's just the carbs from the cow. It's just, and then it's been pasteurized, so it's not digestible properly. And you think, well, isn't it fairly clear why this is going on? You just want to shout at them, get over to the double cream. You know you want it. It's absolutely fine. Go to the double cream. So foods to include, well, shellfish and small oily fish, organ meats. The normal paleo template, again, this is why the paleo template I don't think is so brilliant. It usually starts at the third one there, and they all eat loads of red meat and poultry, which is fine, but the real medicine of food comes in those first two. It's extraordinary what that can do. The fermented foods and bone broths for healing the gut, the shellfish and the small oily fish for getting all the DHA. It absolutely fixes the nervous system. You won't fix anything unless the nervous system is fixed. And this is wonderful. It gets into all the nerves, it gets into the brain. It's brain food. It really is. It's wonderful stuff. And very anti-inflammatory because of the omegas. And whatever else. We don't know all the cofactors that would be in that. Don't be frightened of any natural fats, animal fats, butter, coconut oil, olive oil, avocados. All of this is absolutely fine. They're not sins. Non-starchy veg, broccoli, cauliflower, leafy greens and berries in season and organic. Berries, you know, maybe drop them out if you're really trying to lose weight, because this is why I don't have my abs anymore. It's because of massive amounts of double cream and red wine. Those are my two sins since I got better, and they're absolutely irresistible. And so yeah, there we go. But high fat, it hasn't caused any inflammation. This is the interesting thing. Huh? It was all down to this carby stuff. High fat dairy, if it's tolerated. Some people don't tolerate dairy too well, but listen to yourself. If you're healing something autoimmune, it might be best to drop these out, and butter can come back in first. Thank goodness, because everything tastes good with butter on it. John always says you can fry a flip-flop in butter. It tastes good. Okay. Sample meals. So what do you actually eat on this? What's going to happen when all your sandwiches and pasta dishes have gone? Well, scrambled eggs, loads of butter, a few rashers of bacon, some wheat-free sausages, mushrooms and spinach. There's a great meal. You know, that's better. Surely isn't that better than Cocoa Pops for breakfast, isn't it? Now you know it's healthy. It's fine. Ribeye steak or lamb chops with broccoli and butter. These are just things I eat really simply. I don't make all these paleo breads and cakes and things like that. But if you can be bothered, go for it. But not. I don't know. I like the real simplicity of it. It took me a while, I suppose. Wild Alaskan salmon with asparagus and butter. Homemade burgers. That's great. If you go down to a good butcher and get some mince, you don't need those ones with wheat in. And then you just make this flour-free cauliflower cheese, absolutely dripping in unpasteurized cheddar and coconut milk or creams. Marvelous, you know, nothing wrong with that. And the Sunday roast. We have that probably every other day. We'll roast something. There's always a chicken in there, or for the kids, I don't eat chicken that much. It can be a little problem if you have inflammation, because they feed them, even the free-range ones, they feed them on corn. I would put it down the bottom. Jack Cruz always says 2 legs good. 2 legs bad, 4 legs good. Foul is foul. But it's okay, you know, it's fine. It's a really good food compared to a loaf of Mother's Pride, so don't worry about it. But if it does give you a little bit of pain, if you have something autoimmune, maybe cut it for a bit. Prawn cocktails, homemade mayo and avocados, big pans of batch cooked meat and veg stews. People say, well, how do I do this? I need something efficient and quick for breakfast. Well, say you've roasted a load of veg for a meal before, you can just scramble them with some eggs in seconds and then off you go to work. Or you can do all these big batch cooked things of stews, meats, anything you want really, from all those. All herbs and spices are fine, by the way, you know, fats, herbs, spices, go for it. You can make something completely different tasting out of all of these things every day. And it's really easy to do a whole load of those. I do a load of cooking on a Sunday, and I put things in the freezer, and it's really easy. You know, you can just go and grab something and heat it up, put it in a flask, take it to work. I find I only eat once or twice a day. I can't imagine eating 3 times a day anymore, because it takes such a while to get hungry, because the fat and the protein is so satiating. And something that I always get told maybe not to say too much, but I actually found that zero carb is really quite amazing in the winter. This is so counterintuitive. It's taken me until this winter to have the bottle to do it, with research into people that are actually doing it. But if there was such a problem not eating vegetables, then surely the Inuit would have been in a bit of a problem. Now, you don't do it through the summer, maybe. Just eat veg, it's fine, non-starchy veg. But if you're healing, even that can be the culprit. Natasha Campbell-McBride's GAPS diet, fantastic, gut and psychology syndrome of how to progressively heal the gut. She'll start off with really well-cooked meats in bone broths. She'll have very, very well-cooked veg, but sometimes taking the veg out. She has people on this for a year and they're absolutely fine. They are fine. There's incredible websites out there like Zero Carb Zen and the Principia Carnivora Facebook group. You can see cases of people really healing an awful lot with just eating ribeye steak. Now, I don't know how long they're going to be okay on that. I suspect they'll probably be fine. Probably be absolutely fine. Some families, whole families have been on it for years. Reversed Lyme disease, all kinds of things. It's just that the dietary advice we have is really, it's obviously nonsense, because people are doing these things and they're fine. But then you take it back to the ancestral thing, you can always find that there's an answer for it then. The Inuit are okay. You know, they're fine. The American Indians, in the winter, they must have been pretty much keto. They were eating pemmican, solidified fats with all sorts of other things in. They were absolutely fine too, when there was nothing around to bring down and eat. So what about desserts and drinks and stuff? Well, again, this is not really Slimming World. You can keep on doing this if you have great willpower. But if you're asking, you're a sugar addict, like most of us, I am. We all are. It's more addictive than crack. So forget desserts. Just forget them for a while. If these fatty foods, these wonderful meals that you can make are so satisfying that you really won't miss the desserts after a while. The cravings will go away. And forget sugary drinks too, including fruit juices. Just drink water. It's what we're supposed to drink. I know this might sound a little bit savage and like there's nothing left, but really it leaves, as far as I'm concerned, leaves all the best foods. All the best foods, apart from potatoes. I really miss potatoes dripping in butter, but hey, one thing. Artificial sweeteners such as stevia or xylitol, sugar alcohols, they don't affect insulin so much, but they do mess about with the gut, and they can keep the addiction ticking over. I learned the hard way that massive bowls of cream, raspberries and xylitol do actually put weight on. They really do. And before that I was eating like a horse and I would never put an ounce on. But once I found that my joints would let me reintroduce dairy again. So, fruit's healthy, isn't it? Well, again, not in England in the winter, especially if you're out of balance or overweight. If you really must, some berries in season, with or without the double cream, Greek yogurt and maybe stevia or xylitol. But again, it keeps, even if you have something that's fooling the body that it tastes sweet, it keeps the addiction going. So when you stop at the garage, you're going to be much more likely to want to nip in and get that Mars bar. You know, that's what I find. If I just ignore it, the craving goes away. And if not, it can be very connected with emotional stuff. And Maidi's absolutely brilliant at that kind of thing, being able to show people how they're eating emotionally. And this is one of the real problems with emotional food. There's a mix. There's hyper-palatable foods. There's sugars and fats don't occur together in nature except in milk, breast milk. This is what babies are supposed to have. The 50-50 or 60-40 odd combination of carbs and fats is so hard to resist binging on. You know, you imagine a load of Greek yogurt with honey in it or something. The kids just go nuts for it. They can't stop. Chocolate, this is the mixture of fat and sugar. Cakes, crisps, even chips and crisps, they're savoury, but they have the same mix of fat and carbohydrate. It doesn't have to be sweet. Really addictive foods, these are the ones that people binge on. Enjoy lots of fats, but add them to protein and veg. Binging on these foods is often emotional, it really is. It sends you back. I heard something on radio too where they're putting it all back to breast milk and going, this particular mix is because we always want to go back to that breast milk hit. Who knows? I don't know, but it was kind of an interesting theory. So what about alcohol? Well, alcoholic drinks can be very high in carbs, so best minimized if losing weight, that's obvious. Many are made from grains, so they can be inflammatory. I think it's a great deal of difference drinking a pint of beer to drinking a glass of red wine. It really is a lot easier on the body. But even if the drink's low carb, the body doesn't burn fat while it's processing the alcohol. So for that time when it's processing the alcohol, it won't lose weight. So just bear that in mind. If you want to drink, fine. If you want to have some tequila, but you'll just slow down progress, probably. I had to give it all up for a couple of years, and that was, yeah. So dry wines, tequila, rum, brandy, but it's a small question, really. I think we focus on the wrong things. Yes, drinking and smoking are bad, but you get everything else right. All those indigenous people, they all have their way of getting completely trashed, don't they, in the evening, and they have their own home brews, and a lot of them smoke tobacco. Nothing happens to them because they get everything else right. So what about supplements? Well, better to get everything from the diet than sunshine. It's more about absorption anyway. This is what people don't realise, that getting the nutrients out of the food, vitamins and minerals, is much more to do with the state of your gut bacteria than it is to do with how much you put in. The sort of people that really need vitamins and minerals are not going to get any of them out of something they get from Holland & Barrett because they can't digest them. Focus on the gut health. Very simple. Focus on the gut health. And money is usually wasted without testing anyway, and the NHS, they'll test for the wrong things and they won't really do what you want. You can get tested, and I would say yes, if you hit some plateau with your healing, go and get tested. Go and see my friend Gabby or something, a good naturopath. They can do the tests, they can do it in several ways, and they can tell you exactly what you need, so that they might be expensive to go to, but they'll save you an awful lot in Holland & Barrett. You know, I could probably buy a car with the stuff that I was rattling about within the first couple of years, and I would say all of it was completely unnecessary. I very much doubt if any of it was necessary. It makes for some interesting coloured wee, but that was about the most entertaining thing it did. Anyway, also some supplements can contain GMO stuff, genetically modified stuff, or grain-based fillers. So people with inflammation are then setting it all off again. It doesn't take much. Little tiny bite of wheat can really cause mayhem if you're trying to fix the gut. Fish oil capsules can be rancid, you can't see in there, and they only contain a fraction of what you get from fish. It's just humans again, isn't it? We can improve on a fish, so we'll drain this oil out and give it to you. You take good fish oil and it isn't rancid, I'm sure it does some good, but what else is in fish? What else is in fish that we don't even know about? So why spend another 50 quid a month on fish oil capsules? Eat a load of fish. So what about exercise? Well, this is something that was so dear to me because I was so obsessed with it for such a long time. And my body always told me that cardio exercise was just wrong. I wasn't overweight at all at school, but I was always at the back with the fatties in the cross country or whatever, because I just thought, it's just no point. Why am I doing this? Why am I hammering all of these miles out? It's not enjoyable at all. It doesn't even burn fat efficiently. So, you know, if you're healing, if you're overweight, or if you've got something inflammatory, don't worry about exercise. 99% of body composition is done in the kitchen, it's not done in the gym anyway. So, do some walking, do whatever's comfortable for your body. There'll be a time, I promise, when these things reset, where you'll feel this new body that you've got, and it feels amazing at the moment. I still can't believe how I feel. You know, I'm 54 now, I feel better than I ever have. And there's a time where it craves exercise. Sometimes I get up in the morning, I have to go out. I'll go out on a mountain bike, or I'll go in my garage and train with some weights, because you really want to. But if your body doesn't want to, listen to your body. And when you do favour weight training, sprints, natural movement, there's a great friend of mine, Roger, I'd love to get him along to some of these things. He's really into this whole natural movement thing. You know, climbing trees, running around, throwing things, just not pounding the pavement, the same movement over and over again. He'll even have a go and get you out of the gym. He says anything on one plane of movement's absolutely rubbish. He's probably right. We never did that either. So walk and stand as much as you can. If you've got a sedentary job, just stand up. It's sitting is real deadly. Somebody once said, I think on one of these groups I saw somebody was on talking about this, what's a healthy chair then? There isn't a healthy chair. Loads of people are having stand-up workstations now. It's huge. Keep the lymphatic system moving. If you're sitting at a computer, just get up every now and again, run around, run up and down the stairs, bounce up and down. So this ancestral heritage thing. Think of what we do or eat at this latitude at this time of year. So we're in this room. Think, okay, to me there's blue light, there's Wi-Fi flying around. Those would be the two main things for me in this room. It's cool though, it's like a gathering, and that's great, that's nice and ancestral, that's brilliant. But there are a load of things that aren't right here that you feel kind of a bit dodgy. I go out fishing one night a week. I just sleep out on the bank, and I see the dusk, I see the dawn, I don't have any artificial light. And I always used to do this, and I realized that even when pain was coming up, I was full of ibuprofen, my back was hurting so much, I'd go there, I'd smoke ciggies, I'd eat rubbish, I'd drink beer, and yet my inflammation would all go down. Why was that? I had bare feet, I always liked bare feet, and I'd have my bare feet on the ground. I'd see the light cycles, the natural light cycles. As soon as I got home, the pain would start again. It was amazing, I couldn't understand it because I'm putting it all down to diet, and then it took me years to realise what was actually going on. And I can see it happening again. I feel so much better when I'm sitting at the lake. I just need to go there and just get my feet on the ground, and you can feel all this backed up energies, if you like, that you've had from all the Wi-Fi just disappearing into the ground. Anyway, before this time, if the bone records are accurate, like I said, we can never really ever live or eat like our ancestors, but it's quite a useful template. So beyond diet, same principles can be applied to all areas of the lifestyle. If somebody picks one thing, any one of these disciplines, and tries for it, because modern medicine says, try one thing, one cure for one disease, never works, even the good things. A leaky boat, if you've got 7 holes in it, you've got to plug them all at once. And we just want to help you to identify these holes. There's nothing as rewarding as taking control of your own health. So what would be a sample day for me? We're almost there now. So get up, drink a pint of water, go outside with bare feet onto the earth and look towards the sun to kick in the cortisol cycle. The science is all there on this. Sounds mad, sounds hippie, but the science is there. You need to kick off the cortisol cycle with some blue light early in the morning. Do some sort of exercise, jump around a bit, go for a walk around the block. Shower, and if you can, drink a lot of water too in the morning. The body's in its kind of detox time there. And finish up with 5 minutes of cold. People hate this, but over one winter when I was really skinny but still inflamed, I was taking cold baths every day. It's another thing I'd love to get into, the cold thermogenesis thing. Rolling around in the snow, it just kills inflammation. It resets the body via the hypothalamus. Look up a guy called Wim Hof, the Iceman. Absolutely fascinating. Swims under polar ice, all kinds of things. Absolute nutter, but he can just control his immune system. It's quite extraordinary. Do some sort of exercise, jump about, get the lymph system moving, eat once or twice a day, not too close to bedtime. Eat with your hunger. Don't take any particular guidelines from me. Whenever you're hungry, you eat. That's when the body's digestion is strongest. It's so simple. It's so simple. So 5 minutes of cold shower, just turn around once or twice to start with. Honestly, it's a shock, but it's invigorating. But when you look at the science of it, you realise exactly why it's invigorating. Also, it really burns fat. It really burns fat. If you're on some kind of plateau and you get in cold baths every day, it actually turns the more harmful white adipose tissue to brown adipose tissue. It's supposed to be impossible, but they found with the cold they do it. A lot of athletes are doing that now. They're recovering in the cold, training in the cold. It's very cool. So, again, autophagy. The longer you go in between a meal, if you can eat at 10 and 4 or just once at 2, you're going to give the body all that healing time, whatever you've eaten at that time. Timing of meals, particularly when you're ill, is quite often more important than what you eat. Again, if you're a sedentary, get up, run around. If you use computers a lot, consider blue blocking glasses. They're really cheap on Amazon. So yes, light candles, turn off the Wi-Fi lights, use glasses if watching TV. Bed by 10 PM if you can, don't overheat the bedroom, ventilate the room, no phones by the bed. No bathroom light. So if you've had all the blue light cut out of your eyes all of the evening, then suddenly you go for a wee in the middle of the night, turn on the bathroom light, that's morning. The body says that's morning. And don't worry if you can't sleep. There's too many things I'm going into here, but biphasic sleep, getting up in the middle of the night, glasses on, watch a film, do a little bit of work, whatever you want to do, that's fine. So, keep the blue light out of your eyes. Right, there's a few great books. There's Mark Sisson's The Primal Blueprint, if you're new to this. It's really a basic paleo thing, but it gives such a great illustrations with Grok the caveman and the Korgs, the modern family, and the difference between what they do in the day and how it affects their hormonal balance. Just the first couple of chapters of that are absolutely fascinating, really entertaining, and he's a great guy. I mean, he's very knowledgeable, and for 60 years old, he looks quite extraordinary. This is Finney and Volek's book, The Art and Science of Low Carbohydrate Living. It's pretty much the Bible on this. They're amazing. They've covered pretty much everything in that one. Oh, there's my book. Well, one of them. That's the one I wrote back in '96, and it was all excellent, I thought, except for the diet one, that I curled my toes in embarrassment and completely redid, and then put it out a little while ago. If you have anybody who's autoimmune, maybe get them to have a look at this. I think they'll enjoy it. This is my book. And it really was the best thing that ever happened to me. Disease is an extraordinary thing. It's really healing on all levels if you come through it. It's not just the satisfaction and being sort of empowered that you've taken your health under control, but it brings you things on levels that you'd never have realized. And there's a whole load of woo-woo in there anyway, but it was amazing. There's all my story from the real despair to really getting better. So this group, if anybody's into it, we're going to do it on the 2nd and 4th Tuesday of every month. Intro talks for new people about 7 PM. I'll maybe look at this one and see what it looks like and cut it down if it's too long and boring. I was hoping Ava would slap me about for that. So old hands can come along after that talk, guest speakers, question and answer, sharing experiences. Once fixed, it's so cool to pay it on, you know. People who I talk to about it, they come back 6 months later and teach me so much. It's great not having any kind of dogma, and you can be open to all these experiments. They say, oh, only randomized controlled trials are to be trusted, but no, these stories I have of people, it's marvelous. I do a lot of Skyping with people for autoimmune stuff, and it's amazing to see it come back. And they'll come back with, and I tried such and such. Whoa, well done. You know, we're all just one brain working together, really. So guest speakers, we'd like to get Joanne McCormack in. And I was talking to Paul, all sorts of things. Maybe have some of the food up here to try, and have it, you know, some evening where we're looking at all the cooking and how to prepare stuff. Summer festivals, maybe. If you want something covered, let us know, or always just email. I'm always absolutely fine. So what else do we offer? We do Skype consultations. If anybody's got autoimmunity, that's my kind of side of it. Personal consultations. I don't mind going to somebody's house and saying, all right, let's really sort this out in one day. You know, I sat down with Steve for only 2 hours or something, and he just off he went with it. And I mean, look, it's fantastic. 5 stone off, and all the pain meds gone, and it's really easy. And once you know it, you don't need to know much. I did all this enormous amount of study, but actually, when I think about all the study, 99% of it was useless. It's a really, really simple. So talks and presentations, universities and colleges, day courses for businesses, whatever. We do all that kind of thing. If you check at the website, or the Pure Activity Facebook page, there'll be news of anything that's going on. And there we go.